Mr. Patel should take the nation into its confidence on our preparations for Brexit. How do we position ourselves to continue growing our relationship with the UK? What current talks are between our President and the newly installed Prime Minister Boris Johnson in order to grow new relationships with the UK? And how are our consultations with the European leaders progressing? What is their stance with respect to trade with the Africa after Brexit comes into effect? Honourable Chairperson, it is not rocket science to observe that this increased trade with the UK and Europe will result in more jobs, especially for our youth. This can only be positive as we see the rise of youth unemployment in our country and the desperate need to skill our young people to become employable. Good has always been clear. Directly creating jobs is not government's role. It's the role to lay foundations for an environment favorable to job creation to position our country to succeed. With Brexit looming large on the horizon, the work government does behind the scenes today will impact how our country looks tomorrow. If we are seen to be turning the corner on corruption, creating conditions conducive to trade such as reducing red tape, investing in our infrastructure, building a world-class transport system, securing our ports and harbors, and providing policy certainty to investors, we will be well positioned to benefit from Brexit. Let us not waste the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Let me start off by extending our condolences to the family of our former Deputy Minister Babalile Shlongwa. May her soul rest in peace. Our condolences to her family, friends, and the African National Congress at large. Let me also welcome and congratulate Minister Patel and his team for the good work you have done. Indeed, I think Comrade McPherson is correct that in signing this agreement, you will save thousands of jobs in South Africa, particularly in the Western Cape, because a lot of our fruit in the agricultural sector plays a pivotal role in the economy of the Western Cape particularly. So I think we must congratulate you for the role that you have played. And in that process, I think you may have saved many, many jobs in South Africa. And thank you very much for that foresight into realizing what could happen had we not. Let me also welcome your initiative, Minister Patel, in the manufacturing sector, particularly in the textile and things. And I know that you have a new initiative that you want to put forward in terms to strengthen and enhance the manufacturing industry. Again, let me congratulate you for that. Now, let me just set the record straight on some issue here, particularly that I heard Comrade Shivambu talk about prescribed assets. Yes, indeed, prescribed assets is a great thing, would have been a great thing in South Africa had we been able to manage ourselves professionally in a satisfactory manner. That not being the case in South Africa at the moment, touching on the investments of our pensioners is clearly not a good idea. And I know where Honorable Shivambu comes from there, because if you prescribe that assets, automatically he has control over it so that he can pocket those monies, which is what he has been doing for a long period of time. And that is why he believes it is in the interest to go and prescribe these particular assets. And it's been loud and clear that it has been. Let me also add one more thing, you know. We talk about the UK and the European Union, and particularly, yes, indeed, I must agree that we have the assets. The African continent has all the resources, indeed, but it is not the wealth that we are enjoying today, because it is in the hands of many of the Western superpowers, where raw materials. But let us also not forget that it is your party leadership that was in the UK and that was sipping wine. They were the leaders of the mining magnates there. So, I mean, we cannot say one thing and do something else. So if you guys promote it when it suits you all, and then when it does, then it does. Minister, I just want to add that one very important thing we need to be cognizant of, and that is, if xenophobic attacks continue in South Africa, what is the effect going to be if the SADC countries and Africa as a whole decides to want to stop doing business with South Africa? That can have a devastating effect, and I think we need to actually address that. However, I think the National Freedom Party fully supports the agreement that you have entered in, and thank you very much.
Honorable Carlo.
Honorable Chair, it is worth noting that South Africa is a member of the G20, G77, and was recently elected as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. It offers the world a unique opportunity to explore the African market. In a joint BRIC statement that was issued by Russia on behalf of the Union in 2009, there were signs that peace and democracy were among the key issues that the BRICS Dominion would gravitate towards in the long run. The statement provided that, as I quote, "We underline our support for a more democratic and just multipolar world order based on the rule of international law, equality, mutual respect, cooperation, coordinated action, and collective decision-making of all states. We reiterate our support for political and diplomatic efforts to peacefully resolve disputes in international relations," close quote. In acknowledging the significance of the BRICS Union in his 2014 State of the Nation address, former President Jacob Zuma stated that, as I quote, "Participation in international multilateral forums such as the G20 have been beneficial for the country, and joining the Brazil, Russia, India, and China BRIC groups in December 2010 counts as among the key achievements of the fourth administration. There is also a great opportunity, in our view, for the BRICS Union to establish a committee on free BRICS African trade to unlock Africa's potential. This can have massive influence on Africans' infrastructural capital. It could improve our trade relations, create large-scale employment, and produce local financiers, and further establish the African Continental Monetary Fund. If that could be achieved, Honorable Chair, Africa would cease to be exploited by the International Monetary Fund and your World Bank.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much.
The Honorable Tatalkota.
Thank you, Chairperson. History has happened, and history will continue to happen. Today, we consider an issue which affects the history of this country profoundly. We have to remember that we were linked to the British in the 1800s already, that our gold minings, our diamond minings, many industries that this country developed were linked to the relationship that we had in history. Whatever the pleasant and unpleasantness of that relationship, history happened the way it happened, and today we have to consider what is in the interest of the people of this country going forward. We have relations that go way beyond the British, and we must maintain those relationships with various countries which make for the betterment of the conditions of life of the people of this country. The Germans, the European Union, the British, we must be able to recognize that we are an independent country, and subject to what relations we strike with different countries, that is the road we will take to take South Africa forward. If the British disagree with the Europeans and decide to reduce relations with them, it must not be at our expense. And we cannot be told by anybody whether we will maintain relations with the British or with the Europeans. We must decide that on the basis of what is in the interests of the people of South Africa. And therefore, we will be happy if there is peace in the world, which means if the British and the Europeans sever relations in a peaceful way, that is in our interest. But we will maintain relations with both. And we must do so. Because many of the jobs of the people in this country depends on the trade that we have with the British, with the Germans, with the French, and so on. Why should we consider to sever or to disrupt economic and other relations with countries which otherwise have no track to fight us? We must therefore hope and persuade to the extent possible that South Africans and South African business must understand that they are at home in this country as long as they keep such trade with other countries as strengthens the conditions in this country. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Lekota. Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I'm a bit worried that the 2,000 pages the Minister speaks about may benefit Britain more than South Africa. The consequences of South Africa could obviously be huge. It is very difficult to understand what Brexit really means for South Africa. The implications could be far-reaching. What happens if there is a change of government? South Africa can be reasonably confident by the end of 2019 at the latest, the UK will not legally be part of the EU. The biggest threat to South Africa will be reduced export demand if the Brexit negotiations damage the UK economy. Predicting the impact of Brexit on South Africa is further complicated by the need by 2019 to negotiate a final South Africa-UK trade agreement to replace the existing South Africa-EU agreements, which will obviously no longer apply to South Africa-UK bilateral trade after Britain leaves the EU. The Minister seems to be on top of matters, and Minister, your hard work has not gone unnoticed. Brexit is unlikely to damage South African exports to the UK. It could even open up certain offensive opportunities to South Africa, especially in agriculture. And that's why I'm disappointed that the Minister has not given some guidance to the agriculture sector to take advantage of the opportunities. The priority of South Africa is to avoid this default position and negotiation, even temporarily, a UK trade deal that is close to or better than existing EU arrangements. A secondary priority would be to focus on identifying and supporting both domestically and through trade agreements, trade interests which stand to gain from the Brexit change. The ministers are ever not proactive enough to promote trade and get industry for South Africa that would benefit South Africans excluded from the decades of trade, especially during the colonial days and today. It is quite obvious that South Africa would benefit if there is no Brexit deal. So, with respect, I disagree with the Minister and the assessment of the ACDP. Al-Jamaa realizes the importance of exports via inflow, but I think that there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from the initiatives taken by brother leader Muammar Gaddafi, which put Libya to the next level, and South Africa will hopefully also do that. Thank you.
The Honorable Kose.
House Chairperson, Minister, deputies, honorable members, fellow South Africans. Let me add my voice in expressing our heartfelt condolences to the family, comrades, friends, and our comrade Bavelile Hlongwa. Indeed, our country and its people have been robbed of a shining star, a young comrade who still had energy to advance the better life for our people. We are saddened by her passing at such tender age. May her soul rest in peace. Further, one would like to just comment, Honorable McPherson, that it might be actually a bit difficult to separate the presentation of the leadership collective of the African National Congress on the same issue, on the dislike and the dislike of what you like. So-and-so has said something you like, somebody doesn't actually say something you don't like. So I'm just saying it's just unfortunate. The further point, which might be quite important, is that on our part, it is critical that the event of the UK leaving the EU will remain in terms of trade, of our tariff structure, quotas, health and safety standards, rules of origin and cumulations, so that the trade with the UK is not disrupted. To add to this, the European Union as a bloc is South Africa's top trading partner. It is therefore in the interest of the South African SACUM, UK and EU to ensure that Brexit matter is handled in such a way that it does not disrupt the current future trade relationships. The SADC-SACU Economic Partnership Agreement, which was concluded on the 26th June 2016, provides exporters from the 6 SADC countries, including South Africa, with preferential access to EU markets for our products. For South Africa, this includes the automotive industry and our agricultural industry. This preferential access to the EU market makes South Africa imports more competitive versus the other imports, and therefore makes South Africa products more available and desirable. This supports the demand of South African-made goods in the EU and drives jobs and economic growth in our local industries. Our attitude as a country to trade relations is guided, among other things, by the principles of ensuring that trade agreement must advance our agenda of supporting industrial development, enhance South Africa exports of high value-added products, to protect sensitive sectors, as well as to ensure that our trade relations advance regional or continental integration. Being part of the international trade regime within the rule-based international system, our country has benefited and continue to benefit from various trade agreements. We have bilateral, multilateral with other nations of the world. It may be that we desire to export value-added products to the world as opposed to exporting driven by commodities. The UK-EU trade agreement with South Africa and with its SACUM provide such trade platforms where industrial development can be enhanced. Since the decision by the UK to exit the EU, our government, in particular the Minister of Trade and Industry, has interacted with the UK government to develop a principled agreement to roll over trade rules of the SADC-EU Economic Partnership Agreement. This principled agreement will ensure that the existing tariff lines, which includes tariffs on autos, textile, clothing, sugar are more severely affected outside the Brexit development. As the Minister of Trade and Industry said in his statement announcing the agreement reached with the UK, that, quote, the agreement creates an environment which preserves current trading conditions and protect jobs. If a deal is reached between UK and EU, this acts as a sort of insurance policy, close quote. We are fully optimistic that there will be any disruption regardless of the route the UK takes finally. The negotiation also addressed matters relating to rules of origin, sanitary and psychosanitary and other transactional agreements were attended to. The former and current Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition have consistently kept the Portfolio Committee of Trade and Industry updated on any development regarding this matter. The legacy report of the Portfolio Committee outlines how the committee and the department led by the minister have worked together in their different functions and roles to ensure that South Africa trade's relation with the UK are not negatively affected by the Brexit. The ANC also applauds the inclusion of accumulation provision allowing the development of our regional value chain. The success negotiation of this provision by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition will allow South Africa to source inputs from our SACUM neighbors when exporting to the UK, and will further allow our SACUM neighbors to source critical inputs from South Africa when they export to the UK. The new economic partnership agreement is product of the coordination and work between 6 African countries and is proof of the power of collective African approach can have when dealing with the global trading partners. It lays the foundation for our country to work together and begin in the implementation of the African Continent Free Trade Agreement, bringing an entire continent to a 1.3 billion people working together. The ANC also welcomed the continuation of the existing safeguard measures on poultry. The South African poultry industry is critical for job creation and transformation in agriculture, supporting direct employment for nearly 50,000 people. However, it has been under pressure from imports, which has hurt the industry badly. The safeguard measures against the EU, and which has now been continued to cover the UK and even the no-deal Brexit, provide such additional protection to the industry, while the new master plan to the drive growth, investment and job development and implemented. We have, however, aware that the process of the UK-EU, which may have been an impact on what the Brexit occurs, if it does not win. However, we have pleased to, have the existing occur. South Africa exporter to UK can have certainty they will need to invest, employ, and produce without disruption. The ANC therefore supports the conclusion of the SACUM UK Economic Partnership Agreement and calls on the House to ratify the agreement as soon as it is brought before Parliament. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable the Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you very much, honourable members, for the comments. I think what we saw today is widespread support across the House for the agreement. I want to thank Honourable McPherson for his congratulations, and we agree we should use the instruments of industrial funding to leverage more opportunities for the country. I do not agree, however, with the characterization of the South African economy, particularly with the characterization of trade unions as enemies of growth. If we, in fact, can reach agreement with the UK We can and should be reaching agreement with trade unions, with business organizations, with South Africans on how to move the economy forward, to unify the nation around a compelling vision of growth and of jobs and of transformation. That's our task. Not to exclude, not to walk away, but to include, to be this place, the center that ensures this nation holds and it develops and it builds and it transforms. We are open to trade with the rest of the world, with the United States and with China, with Britain and with India, with Portugal and with Brazil. We do what is in the interest of South Africa, in the interest of workers and communities, in the interest of industrialists and investors from South Africa. And that must be our guiding basis. I must say, honorable members, I was somewhat puzzled by the comments of the Honorable Shivambu. And I'd like to share with the Honorable Shivambu that the overall value of trade between South Africa and the United Kingdom strongly favors South Africa. We import or buy about 36 billion rands worth of goods. We export or sell about 106 billion rands worth of goods. So we run a very big trade surplus. Why should we walk away from this? I want to also take issue with the question of industrialization. Of course, the point is valid. We need to deepen industrialization. We need to do more. We can't just be a seller of raw materials to the rest of the world. But if you look at the list of the top 10 exports we sell to the United Kingdom, number 3 is the export of cars. Jobs for workers in Tshwane, in Nelson Mandela Bay, in eThekwini. 120,000 South African workers assemble cars and and make components here in South Africa. We are Africa's manufacturer of cars, producing 600,000 cars every year that we sell in our own country and to the rest of the world, earning foreign exchange, ensuring that those workers have wages, giving job security, providing opportunity, getting taxes that can build houses and provide healthcare to our people. But on the top 10 list, aside from the 7 billion rands worth of cars, there's also catalytic converters that we sell. And this is something in a car that uses platinum. It beneficiates South African platinum here in South Africa, creating local jobs and ensuring that, in fact, we provide opportunities for South Africa. I'm reminded of the debates we had in the 1980s when we built a militant trade union movement that took on apartheid. When we met with workers, there were sometimes two views. One view is don't sign wage agreements with the employers. And the other one, which is the view that workers accepted, that we had a strong mandate for, is use your organizational capacity and power and enter into those agreements. Make sure that those are good agreements. Our job is not to bake slogans, but to bake bread. It's not to build rhetoric, but to build cars. It's not to dig divisions, but to dig gold and platinum. It's to provide opportunity for South Africans. And so as we move forward, because the statement dealt with Brexit only, we didn't look at all the other elements of our industrial strategy. The meetings we have with the poultry industry, the discussions, as Honorable Sheikh Imam said, with the clothing, textile and footwear sector, the engagements with the steel industry, as we begin to build support and ideas for a master plan that can transform our economy. And finally, honorable members, our job is not only to focus on trading relations with the UK and with Europe, but it's to deepen the trading relationships on the African continent. And so we have signed an African Continental Free Trade Area, bringing together 54 countries on the continent. 27 have already ratified that. And that's how we are going to build our economy, how we move the economy forward, how we create jobs. I want to end by also extending condolences to the family of the late Bavilile Shlongwa, who has been such a dynamic, talented young South African, able to contribute so much. And I think it is one of the memories that I will have, that her contribution, even to the debates and discussion around Brexit, has been excellent. And so we have lost a great South African. Thank you very much.
That concludes the party responses to the statements, honorable members. And the next item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honorable Malema. on building state capacity through insourcing of government and all state-owned workers. Honorable Madam.
Thank you very much. Members of the EFF, led by our Deputy President Florence Shivambo, Secretary General Godrich Gadi, let us begin by passing our sincere condolences to the ruling party and the family of Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources, K. Daba Veli Letlongwa, on a tragic passing. It is indeed a loss not only for the ANC, but for the country at large, when a young woman leader is lost prematurely on the roads of our country. This is an indication that more work needs to be done in ensuring the safety of our people on our roads, so that we can prevent such accidents. May a soul rest in perfect peace. We are here today to forward the struggle for development and building state capacity as enshrined in the 7 cardinal pillars of the EFF. We have witnessed a lack of direction in terms of economic development, and state capacity continues to deteriorate. The private sector in South Africa is now bearing the fruits of its investment in Tumamina, as we are presented with plans to sell the little control over the economy that the state has. Today, we carry the mandate of cleaners and security guards to once again provide a way forward that will benefit the poor masses of our people, develop the state, and save money. From the outset, we must illustrate to the ruling party what a developmental state looks like. A developmental state must drive economic and industrial development, independent from capitalists, and provide better services to all its people, build and maintain infrastructure, and build an inspired, skilled, and well-compensated workforce. A developmental state must deliver houses, build roads, schools, hospitals, deliver water, and ensure that taxes are spent efficiently. The South African state, in its current form, does not drive the economy or deliver services because it has no capacity. Everything the state does is done through private companies appointed through tenders. Today, government spends an estimated 800 billion through tenders. Today, government appoint private companies to provide simple services such as security, gardening, traveling, cleaning, general maintenance, and other services. Government and state-owned companies appoint companies to build and maintain schools, clinics, hospitals, electricity, power plants, water treatment plants, sanitation plants, and other infrastructure. Government also appoint consultants to develop strategies, write basic documents, reports, and plans. Essentially, what we have is a state that is run like a private company. As South Africa, we have succumbed to the narrative that blacks do not have the capacity to govern their own affairs, that they must be controlled by a private sector which is dominated by white-owned private companies. A private sector that has no obligation to develop South Africa, but is motivated to bleed us dry of our resources. Inflated prices and corruption are one part of the problem with tenders. The other problem is that these companies make our people work under terrible conditions with long hours, no medical aid, and pay them below living wage. The fate of these workers is suffered by many other workers who have worked as contract workers at PRASA, Transnet, Eskom, Dinel, SAA, and AXA. The question then becomes, what is to be done? As the EFF, we propose that provincial and local government and all state-owned companies must abolish tenders and insource workers on full-time basis. We have led by example with our councillors in municipalities, sponsoring motions of insourcing of cleaners, security guard, gardeners, and general maintenance workers. Due to the intervention and leadership of the EFF, more than 4,000 security guards are insourced in Johannesburg with a salary of 10,000 per month, medical aid, pension, and uniform. More than 1,000 cleaners are employed with a salary of 10,000. Cleaners who used to be employed by private companies are now employed directly by the city of Johannesburg. The EFF caucus in Nelson Mandela Bay, city of Tshwane, and all municipalities that did not have outright winners in 2016 local government elections are engaged in programs that will lead to the insourcing of workers. While there are positive results and correct direction, the only sustainable and long-term solution is national legislation that promotes the insourcing of workers and detenderizing the state at all levels. We have since started a process here in Parliament to introduce insourcing private members' bill. A capable state will provide the quality of work and can additionally use its procurement capacity to drive local industrialization and development of the economy. South African government at national, provincial, and all state-owned companies must be rescued from the control of Bidvest Company, which currently is responsible for almost everything that government can do by itself. Bidvest is the biggest culprit in employment of outsourced, underpaid workers as cleaners, gardeners, general workers, and provide a lot of goods and services which the state can purchase with internal capacity. The bill was gazetted in October 2018, and we invite all interested parties to make input so that it can be adopted after the recess and before the end of the year. Let us all unite in saving the money of the taxpayers and put an end to the exploitation of workers by private companies that are in business with the state. Let us unite to build a state capacity and free the ruling party from the chains of Bidvest and Busasa. Building state capacities through the insourcing of workers is one of the many steps towards the economic development. I thank you.
Honorable Machubela. Mashele.
Honorable members,
Honorable Mashele, can you just hold for a while?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable members, please.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Honorable members, order, please. Honorable members, please. Honorable Kadi. Honorable Kadi. Honorable members. Honorable members.
Sorry, House Chair, can you get control of the House, please?
Honorable members, could you please sit down? Honorable members. Honorable members, the behavior is unacceptable, please. Honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, please. Can we bring the House to order? Honorable members, let us not allow ourselves to deteriorate the decorum of the House. We are all responsible for it. We cannot go on like this. We are all responsible. We are all responsible. We are all responsible members of this House. I repeat. And we take charge of the decorum of the House, each one of us. We cannot go on like this. Honorable Mashele, can you take the podium?
Sorry, House Chair.
Honorable member, why are you rising?
House Chair, sorry, I'd like to take a point of order.
What's your point of order?
The point of order, House Chair, is that I would be expected of the presiding officer to at least request an investigation into the circumstances that have just happened. You say we're all responsible for decorum in the House. You're responsible for upholding the rules of Parliament. What has just happened here is a gross violation of the rules of Parliament. And I would really request you as a presiding officer to at least initiate an inquiry into what has just happened here. It's not acceptable for members to be threatened in the way that they've been threatened.
Order, honorable members. I have taken concern of that, honorable member. I'm aware of that. We'll make a follow-up on that. Order,
Yes,
honorable
Chairperson.
members.
I don't
Honorable
know.
member, why are you rising?
I don't know what must be investigated because people were talking to each other here. Do we investigating people talking to each other these days?
Honorable member.
For real, Honorable Chief Whip of the DA, people were talking to each other. I saw the president of the EFF speak to another member until they finished. Now we must investigate even what you just said there to each other. What's going to happen? Investigate the conversations of people all over the house.
Thank you very much.
Let's debate insourcing, please.
Honorable Ndlozi, of course, we'll go to answer, check what has happened, and take appropriate measures. Thank you very much. Honorable member, can we continue?
Honorable members, good afternoon. We send our condolences to the family of our fallen heroine, Comrade Bavelile. May her soul rest in perfect peace so that she can rise in glory. Honorable members, the African National Congress has adequately diagnosed the challenges confronting the state and makes concrete proposals to build a capable state. In the National Development Plan, the whole Chapter 13 was dedicated to building a capable and developmental state. And what our colleagues from the EFF need to understand is that building a capable state will be a gradual process that needs careful implementation. Insourcing, therefore, must be coupled with quality assurance measures to ensure that the state is able to improve its capacity in providing services to its people. As such, the NDP notes that one of the main challenges to build a capable state and capable and developmental state is the unevenness in capacity. This leads to uneven performance at local, provincial, and national government. The weaknesses in capacity and performance are most serious, honorable members, in historically disadvantaged areas. The EFF, on the other hand, promised in its 2019 election manifesto that its government will insource all outsourced security guards, cleaners, and gardeners, and general workers, and will make an additional employment of 80,000 workers within 6 months. Only the EFF knows what these 80 additional public sector workers would be doing and how they will fund their remuneration. We are thankful to South African voters that they were able to sift between facts and fiction. Hence, there is no EFF in government anywhere in the country. For the ANC, insourcing is not the only panacea that addresses all the capacity challenges in the state. It is but one of the measures that is being considered by the government. Building capacity in the state involves a system of fair and transparent performance appraisals, lifelong skills development for workers. The acknowledgement of performance, skills development, and fair compensation of public servants builds loyalty to workers of the state and mitigates against inclination towards corruption. A capable state acts decisively and removes those found guilty in misconduct so that the only most committed public servants remain in the system. The public service needs skills and professionalism. This includes offering stimulating career path, ensuring a pipeline of potential talent and innovation is developed across all spheres of government. A capable state invests in human capital that fully understand the constitutional mandate of each sphere of government and the work that needs to be done to improve the lives of people on the ground. The ANC has therefore identified the needs for the SOEs to deal with these capacity constraints. we cannot overemphasize the need to strengthen the governance of the SOEs. The aim for efficient, financially sound, and well-governed SOEs that addresses the country's developmental objectives. The President of the Republic of South Africa has already outlined 7 priorities to deal with building a capable and a developmental state, and one of the 7 pillars is a capable, ethical, and a developmental state. Therefore, honorable members, the African National Congress is not only just talking about the capable and a developmental state, we are not just talking about insourcing. For us, these concepts are not just ideas, but the government is hard at work with implementing the programs. Government is implementing a radical paradigm shift to a comprehensive framework inclusive of resourcing, integration of all public sector institutions, social partners, and accountability mechanism. This informs all levels of government planning through an integrated planning framework. We are confident that the MTSF will further outline the budget priorities framework, labor movements involved on the skills revolution, civil society, and promoting a participatory democracy. We will not ignore the recent reports of the Auditor General, which revealed that municipalities across the country spent more than 3.4 billion on consultants and incurred underspending of more than 44 billion in the previous financial year. As the ANC, we are concerned for the continued extensive usage of consultants in government. This is at the crux of outsourcing, and our manifesto provides a principled decision for government to deal with the over-reliance of consultants in government. This points to the shortage of critical skills and capacity gaps at the local government as identified in the National Development Plan. As this House, we should strengthen oversight, not only concentrating to under-expenditure or outsourcing work for consultancy in government. We should also focus more on identifying skills gaps, assisting all spheres of government to improve state capacity. As the government continues with insourcing workers into the public sector, let us ensure that proper capacity building is done at lower levels and that critical skills are maintained at the senior level. Honorable members, the ANC is mandated with the responsibility for the well-being of all citizens. We are looking further than insourcing. We have committed that in facilitating creation of employment in the public service, the following real interventions are being implemented. The government is implementing participation in public employment programs such as the expanded public works programs through a guaranteed placement of TVET graduates, increasing private sector placement for beneficiaries of the public employment programs. We have rolled out the implementation of the national minimum wage to cover workers in domestic work, farming and forestry, and other vulnerable sectors. We are now conducting oversight on the effective compliance of the implementation of the national minimum wage. The government is working on the adequate legislation to give effect to Constitutional Court ruling on labor broking. We hope that the EFF is able to acknowledge the practical and realistic interventions to address issues of insourcing rather than politicking. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Frank.
Thank you, House Chair. It is not difficult to understand why people would rather work as civil servants than contractors or employees of private contractors. On average, public sector wages are significantly higher than those paid in the private sector. This is especially true for unskilled and lower skilled workers in whose favor the demand for insourcing is often made. In the last decade, the government wage bill has grown faster than the wages in the private sector, faster than inflation, and faster than the JSE All-Share Index. As a ratio to GDP, only the United Kingdom pays more in salaries and wages and benefits to public servants than South Africa. The spending spree has not improved services, and it has not improved the chances of ordinary people to get a job in this country. But now the money has run out. The pockets of taxpayers, including working men and women, are empty. And the DA is very concerned and cautious of demands to transfer ever more people from the payrolls of businesses to the payrolls of government. Insourcing of staff at universities came at a massive price for students, parents, and taxpayers, many of whom did not even have a university education. So this is the warning. Ever more people on government payroll, ever more money spent on salaries and wages of civil servants will inevitably mean less money for essential public services, less investment in infrastructure, lesser security for millions of South Africans who rely on social grants, and less money in the hands of families and private individuals to invest and create jobs. The principle of the matter is this: government does not exist first and foremost for the benefit of the people who work for government. Government's primary objective is to the South African people as a whole. So the question of whether to insource a particular service comes down to this: will it benefit ordinary South Africans? In some instances, it will. There are functions in government departments, municipalities, and entities that can only be fulfilled in-house. The failure of government organs to fill critical vacancies has led to an over-reliance on consultants and service providers, and made municipalities in particular the soft targets of state capture. But it does not follow that all government functions have to be insourced. There are core or non-core functions in government that can be better performed if outsourced. 'n algehele beleid wat byvoorbeeld munisipaliteite dwing om die werkers van privaat kontrakteurs in diens te neem, sal rampspoedige finansiële gevolge hê. Munisipaliteite soos die Wesrand Distrik in Gauteng en Mafube in die Vrystaat kan nie eers bekostig om hulle bestaande werksmag te betaal nie. Suid-Afrika se nasionale krisis is nie dat ons besoldiging te laag is nie, dit is dat ons indiensneming te laag is. Daarom moet die regering staatsbesteding verminder en die versperrings in die weg van ekonomiese groei en werkskepping moet verwyder word. Chairperson, the economic reforms that the DA has championed in and outside of this House are not for the political and corporate elite, but for working men and women, in particular people who are desperate to find work in this country. It is in their interest that the public sector wage bill must be lowered and not inflated. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Pambo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, Commander-in-Chief. As part of the Fees Must Fall generation, we dynamically linked our struggle to free, quality, decolonized education with the struggle for the insourcing of workers in all universities. We did so because we were first-hand witnesses of the super-exploitation that university workers, particularly cleaners, were super-exploited by companies such as Bidvest, Supercare, Servest, Impact, Fidelity, and others. While the struggle for free, quality, decolonized education is ongoing until total victory, we have witnessed certain victories in relation to the insourcing of workers. In a process that was led by Advocate Dalimpofu, the national chairperson of the EFF, which included workers, students, lecturers, made sure and ensured that cleaners and gardeners were insourced and their salaries improved from 2,500 to 8,000. The Wits University workers now have medical aid. They are registered for UIF. The university contributes to their pension and they have staff educational benefits. The Fees Must Fall generation, with the full support of the EFF, also fought for the insourcing of workers at institutions of higher learning such as UNISA, UKZN, the University of Pretoria, and UCT. The following institutions are also following the same process: TUT, Univen, and Fort Hare. All these workers have realized improved working conditions and better salaries. The private members' bill, which the EFF introduced here in this parliament, must be expanded to all institutions of higher learning, in particular universities, universities of technology and TVET colleges. Perhaps, President, we should pass a law that every employer, whether public or private, who needs the permanent services of a cleaner, a gardener, a security guard, should employ them directly and pay them decent wages. The issue of insourcing is not simply an issue of economics, but a question of personhood and dignity. It is a question of our mothers who wake up at 3 in the blistering winter cold to clean toilets and wash dirty linen so that they feed their families and children. It is the question of fathers who, despite illness, wake up to clean windows and scrape floors because they can never allow their loved ones to go to bed on empty stomachs. It is a question of our brothers and sisters who have children waiting for them with growling stomachs and mouths wide open in the silent shacks of Orange Farm, Soshanguve, Soweto, Kukuletu, Khayelitsha. But do we continue to call this work when the conditions that they are subjected to turn them into beings below animals, stripped of all dignity, shamed, and left naked for the world to see? An open wound, open for everybody to poke at, as Fonan would say. Do we still call it work? We refuse to call what the ANC government is doing as work. It is barbarism, modern-day slavery. South Africa is a country at the mercy of capital, and the state, in its current form, does nothing to change the situation. The practice of outsourcing not only undermines our economic development, but leaves an already vulnerable black population in the hands of capitalists who take advantage of their desperation. One cannot expect that to have productive labor force when workers do not earn a living wage. One cannot expect to build state capacity and an independent economy when you outsource services as basic as policy formulation, cleaning, energy generation, and catering and security. South Africa, true to its conception in 1994, has failed to liberate itself from the dependency of imperialism, which today manifests itself as private companies running their affairs a state ordinarily should. It is imperialism, racism, because it is a particular worker of a particular African descendant who is subjected to humiliation and exploitation. What color are the workers who were made to drink urine? Who cleans the toilets? Who cleans the toilets of airports? Who cleans the toilets of this parliament? Who mows the lawns of union buildings? What color are the people who you see every morning and every evening crammed at the back of bakkies? Who are drivers of these bakkies? The people who suffer these injustices are black, and they suffer these injustices at the hands of white capitalists. It is because there is a system that is designed to keep them in a state of servitude. It is this system that the economic freedom fighters want to abolish. It is these chains that we seek to unshackle. To this, we must start with abolishing.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Buthelezi.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu sihlalo hloniphekileyo. Honorable members, at the outset, Chair, allow me to state that the IFP is for insourcing of government workers, but we do not support a blanket approach to insource all jobs into public service. We simply cannot afford it. We do support a measured, constructive, and conservative approach into sourcing. It should not be a norm. We say this, Chair, because we have a ballooning public sector wage bill which already takes a big slice of our ailing GDP. Within this regard, a balance must be stricken, Honorable Chair. We cannot afford to insource work while at the same time we speak of small business development, encouraging entrepreneurial and business ventures. Government cannot speak of a great fourth industrial revolution generation that we found ourselves in, while at the same time we are putting a lead on innovation and we are slowly but surely killing private business and enterprise. For example, Honorable Chairperson, how could anyone then be able to start a small security firm and upskill and provide training to a number of workers while the state compete with the employing security officers and provide lucrative yet unstable packages and cushion jobs. Honorable Chair, we are not saying that government should not address joblessness in our country, but in the same vein, it is important that government creates stricter measures and legislative regulations and control to ensure that no workers is ever exploited by private firms and enterprise. The dignity of our people can never be compromised for money. It has become all too common that tender processes are flouted and has essentially become a conduit for corruption. Outsourced work comes at a ridiculous cost to the state. The use of consultants, outsourced companies and firms is costing the state billions of rand unnecessarily because companies inflate costs when doing business with the state, which does not benefit our people. And this must be addressed through insourcing. With insourcing, we are able to retain skills in the public sector, but this must be done with sufficient skills, with skills transferring, rooting out rot within the public service. It is our hope as the IFP that with employment of skilled workers within the rank of the state, that it will speed up delivery and turnover times. And more importantly, insourcing will guarantee job security for our people. And as the IFP, we support the notion that insourcing is the way to go. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Vessels.
Honorable House Chair, the Honorable Makubela Mashele said that government has the mandate to promote the well-being of everybody. She's quite correct, but does government do that? No, because government has allowed for many, many years the exploitation of private contractors and consultants of government departments. You see, House Chair, it's not a debate of having exclusively insourcing or exclusively outsourcing. It is to do it responsibly in the interest of everybody. And that is what government does not do. The ruling party makes decisions based on what is to the benefit of themselves and their cadres. The internal capacity in government departments and state-owned entities are lacking because of appointments made on the basis of everything except merit. Your former president, Jacob Zuma, told the Zondo Commission in detail how the cadre deployment committee works and how that committee decides who's appointed in what state-owned entity and in what senior official position. And that is why we have a lack of internal capacity on the one side. On the other side, it's because of your policies and policies the EFF supports, like affirmative action, that completely place the emphasis on everything except merit. And that is why we have a lack of state capacity. On the other side, House Chair, we are in a financial crisis. And it's irresponsible to think that everything must be insourced and that we must appoint more and more officials to do non-essential services in government departments. Our wage bill, our government wage bill, is already too high. We need responsible governance. En laat ek ook vir die EFF sê, agbare huisvoorsitter. U sien, dis eenvoudige wiskunde. U kan vandag alle wit mense in die see injaag. Dis nie ras nie. Dit gaan oor wat in Suid-Afrika aangaan. Chase all the white people into the sea, and there will still be poverty. There will still be unemployment, because it's not a racial cause of the problem. And when there's people like the Honorable Malema, who spends more on his shoes than most South Africans get in a lifetime on a living wage, then the money will be finished. And it's nothing to do with white capitalists. It has to do with your policy directions and the fact that South Africa is being governed into the ground. Ons het verantwoordelike regering nodig wat werklik besluite neem in die belang van Suid-Afrikaners. Nie maak nie saak of iemand aanstel nie, maar stel die beste persoon vir die werk aan. Wanneer daar 'n kontrakteur aangestel word, stel daardie kontrakteur aan wat die werk kan doen en wat nie die regering uitbuit nie, want dit is die probleem. Dit is die kern van die debat. Nie of ons moet kontrakteurs aanstel nie, maar waarop en op grond van wat daardie besluite geneem word. Want u stel kontrakteurs aan, agbare voorsitter, wat u maatjies is en wat vir u geldjies onder die tafel gee. Dis hoekom hierdie land leeg gesteel is oor die manier waarop u goed doen. En die EFF sal nie veel verskillend regeer nie. Hulle bewys dit reeds. Hulle steel die mense se geld deur WBS. Hulle sal dit nie enigstens anders doen nie. En dan wil hulle hier kom staan en wit mense blameer. Kyk na jouself in die spieël. Dankie.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP would firstly like to extend its condolences on the tragic passing of an Honourable Deputy Minister Shlongwa. Our thoughts and prayers are with her family, with the ANC and her friends at this sad time. And the ACDP welcomes this debate, given the high levels of unemployment in the country. The question is, however, whether state capacity will in fact be built or enhanced through insourcing as opposed to outsourcing. Should the cost be more or less the same and the service rendered the same or hopefully better, then insourcing should clearly be supported. The ACDP is aware of cases, few as they may be, but at municipal level where insourcing has in fact been successful and where service delivery has in fact improved. However, on the other side, National Treasury has warned that the ballooning public sector wage bill is unsustainable. In addition, we see there are high levels of dissatisfaction with the level of public service rendered across the board. The question then is rather how to improve the capacity to provide better service delivery. And it is one thing to speak of capacitating or building the state through insourcing and skills development. It is a totally different scenario to use the public sector or state-owned companies for job creation, given the unaffordable wage bill. Eskom is, of course, a prime example of this. It presents the greatest risk to our economy as a monopoly power supplier with its 440 billion rand debt. Its problem is simple. It is not generating enough money to cover its enormous costs. It has reported a staggering loss of almost 21 billion after tax for this financial year. This against a 2.3 billion loss for last year. Its bloated staff complement has regularly been singled out as one of the reasons for the power utilities' woes. However, the ACDP, we were involved in the Eskom inquiry, and we readily admit that the financial problems of Eskom are due to state capture, corruption, and maladministration. And while we are in agreement that workers should not bear the brunt of Eskom's poor management and political interference during the Zuma administration, it cannot be denied that Eskom is overstaffed, with some analysts saying up to 66%. The staff complement has increased from 33,000 to a staggering 46,000 in a decade, with the wage bill now standing at more than 32 billion, up from 9.5 billion in 2007. So while the ACDP appreciates the need to increase and improve the state's capacity, insourcing must be both cost-effective and enhance service delivery. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Zungula.
Firstly, I want to extend my condolences to the family and the organization of Deputy Minister UBV. May her soul rest in peace. South Africa is a country that is still recovering from atrocities that were perpetuated in the workplace. The die-hard brokering industry continues to be a sore thumb sticking out and a measure of failure in the labor law regime. We agree with those who say labor brokering is a modern-day slavery. It cannot be that our young democracy is still mired in cheap labor and humans for sale controversies are brought about by labor broking, where brokers make a lot more money than more than the workers who do the actual work. In fact, contrary to popular belief, insourcing is actually cheaper than outsourcing in the long run. The fact that an outsourced worker is paid less than the in-source worker does not mean government is saying, because the broker still gets the difference. So it is a false saving. As the ATM, we fully support insourcing because it provides decent work conditions for the workers. Workers are able to enjoy benefits like medical aid, various other social security benefits, as well as job security. We, however, call on management to provide workers with the necessary tools, equipment, and regular training so that employees are not set up for failure. Insourcing has many benefits and should improve service delivery because the populace will be served by more happy employees. We have tons of trained artisans who can be insourced to do the work for the state. We cannot be having a government that issues tenders for even minor maintenance, such as fixing potholes. The appointment of contractors, even for minor maintenance, is a waste of resources. Johannesburg is a good example of the benefits of insourcing and how we can build a state capacity through insourcing. Insourcing has an anti-corruption effect in that employees that are not part of tenders that may be awarded by corrupt means. We, however, as the ATM, want to caution and warn the country that as long as Section 22 of the Constitution is left as it is, insourcing may be reversed in future. Section 22 continues to provide refuge for labor brokers who may argue that freedom of trade, as expressed in Section 22, also includes labor brokering. We therefore call for the review of Section 22 so that the rights of the workers to be in stable jobs are not threatened. ATM will work with progressive unions to ensure that the dignity of the workers is permanently restored. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable James, the next speaker.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I want to join those who are passing condolences to the families of Comrade Bavelile. We lost a very dedicated cadre of our movement. The ANC's vision of a developmental state necessitates a public sector that provides quality public goods and services to all, is people-centered and people-driven and geared towards development. The ANC is not oblivious to the capacity constraints that are currently being experienced in the public sector. The consideration to outsource is informed on a case-by-case basis and is employed after due consideration of the availability of resources and the specific needs at the time. The process has also been applied in specific cases where skills transfer and training to build capacity in public sector employees is necessitated. It is important to note that outsourcing is not done for its own sake, but its necessity depends on capacity across government. Hence, it is considered and employed on a case-by-case basis. The rationalization of outsourcing finds expression in cases where it is cost-effective for government to build capacity in-house to deliver service, and in the short term. The decision to use external services providers is not taken arbitrarily. The Municipal Systems Act has a list of considerations that must be taken into account. These include cost-benefit analysis of the option to outsource our use in-house services, the capacity and potential future capacity of the municipality to devise services in-house. Outsourcing of public services was initially viewed as a means of providing opportunity for small businesses to enter certain markets and grow. State-owned enterprises provided the opportunity for such growth, allowing small businesses the opportunity to participate as bidders in the procurement of certain service in its value chain. The challenges of outsourcing have been manifest. We want to note that. From challenges in the tender system and declining quality in output that has not met contractual expectations has brought into question the notion. Hence, the manifesto commitment of the ANC arises from this experience. Outsourcing has lost credibility and public trust owing to the fact that it has been used as a vehicle to enriching some individuals at the expense of workers who in most cases are vulnerable due to the fact that they are low-skilled, low-paid, have low or no bargaining power. In addition, the cost of contracting out has in many cases been far more expensive. We are mindful of the fact that both the PFMA and MFA prescribe certain procedures that need to be followed. Outsourcing has resulted in exploitative practices by employers of contracted workers and in many cases weaken the organized working class to the benefit of the few. Services organized all point to this. The assumption that contracted workers will have the experience of those they replace has not been validated. The emerging view that informs the manifesto draft is that it may be better to employ outsourced workers in-house and retain their skill as a means of reinforcing and building state capacity. The practice of insourcing has the advantage of providing better conditions of employment for workers as well as job security. While this practice is desirable, it can only be exercised within the limits of the needs of government and or its enterprises with a view to the availability of financial resource. Insourcing is not, as the sponsors of the motion want us to believe, a panacea for building state capacity. Building state capacity is a far larger project that involves far more than insourcing workers. It can be an end in itself, but rather an assessment of a case-by-case basis with the desirability of the outsourced workers to be insourced. It must be the results of a conscious plan that takes into account all factors to ensure sustainability of the jobs created. Many countries have experimented within the two practices of insourcing and outsourcing, and the results have been varied. Britain employed the practice of outsourcing, which had the objective of driving down state spending. The practice yielded about 25% reduction in spending, while there was a notable rise in corruption-related scandals with regards to awarding of contracts with big business, crowding out small firms from the bidding process. The cost of outsourcing of public services has been borne out by ordinary South Africans who suffer from poorer service delivery, as the companies who get the contract are prone to cost-cutting in order to maximize profit. This has manifested itself in the collapse of certain functions and corruption, leading to the overall weakening of the state. The primary objective of the companies that benefit from outsourcing is to generate profit for its shareholders. And this approach leads to accumulation at the expense of the workers. Insourcing is providing to be a more developmental exercise by, as a result of job security, better wages and purchasing power and increased labor stability. Insourcing has been exercised locally in many different areas where it has worked. The practice has been exercised by universities. Insourcing does not just ensure fair and decent employment, but it also serves to protect the dignity, safety, integrity of workers. This in turn creates loyalty and high morale among workers, and consequently it translates to high quality services. So when we speak about this, we don't speak because we want to sound revolutionary more than others, but we want to better the conditions of those who are doing work and the condition of those who are receiving our services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable others.
Honorable Chairperson, in challenging economic times of massive unemployment and poverty, the idea of a state that provides decent jobs for all its people can be intoxicating. But there's a factory-built flaw. It is precisely in economic times such as these that bloated governments and staff complements at state-owned companies radically curtail the state's ability to deliver services to the people. We have seen the mismanagement and debt that have afflicted state-owned companies. What security is there for workers if companies like Eskom must continue to borrow money from government to pay staff and operational costs? When the wage bills are paid, just a few crumbs remain to provide critical services to those who most need them and to narrow inequity. Workers are the backbone of economies. The more people have jobs, the more people have money to spend, and the more economy grows. The more the economy grows, the further we progress down the road of restoring dignity to the majority of people in our land whom the apartheid government sought to humanize. The state's role is not to employ the unemployed, but together with the private sector to create good conditions in which the people develop its skills appropriate to the economy and economic environmental conducive to investment, growth, and job creation. The private sector is not a secondary partner in this quest. The state procures billions of rands worth of goods and services from privately owned companies every week. Therefore, we have the right to know that workers' rights are adequately protected, that they are being upskilled, earning market-related salaries, and that the companies are operating within the ambit of our labor law. When we have created these conditions across the business landscape and fixed government and its state-owned entities, perhaps we'll be in a more appropriate position to discuss insourcing. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Let me start off by saying that, we cannot have a blanket approach in terms of insourcing. However, insourcing can have a very positive impact on the economy. And let me tell you how. When you deal with consultants, I've given a good example. Consultancy and companies that do consultants are paid an X amount of money. One or two people benefit out of this organization. But if you rather use that money and insourced, you would employ 20, 30, or 40 people. 20, 30, or 40 people will spend that money in the economy, will develop and enhance the economy. But what do the 1, 2, or 3 people do? They use 10% or 2% of the money. The rest of it, they are hoarding it. It's not circulating in the economy. So that is what outsourcing basically does if you encourage outsourcing in the country. Now, one of the things we should be looking at, if you take schools, if you take police stations, if you take clinics, if you take hospitals, we should be building them through insourcing our own people. But given the fact that we have serious challenges, particularly with Eskom and others, why not consider a public-private situation where you get the public sector involved with the private sector, and then together we create this industry and you build your schools, you build your clinics, you build your hospitals, you build your police stations, rather than outsourcing everything with the tender system. We've said before that the tender system at the moment, a loss to the fiscus is in the region of 200 to 240 billion rand as a result of corruption. That is starting from local level alone. And I'll give you a good example. Let me give you a good example. Take Josini. There's a contract that was given from A to B, from B to C, from C to D. D only got paid 500,000, but the contract was 2 million rand. So what is it basically happening? People in between are enriching themselves, and that is why the level of inequality in South Africa is continuing. So if you want to address the inequality and create more jobs, maybe we need to consider that Let's build our own schools, let's build our own colleges, let's build our own hospitals, let's build our own police stations. And that's the route to go if you want to create a better economy in South Africa at the moment. The skills shortage, we have a serious challenge. The TVET colleges are still not speaking to the skills needs of the country. They're not. They're working in silos. And that is why you're going to have to continue, despite a circular in 2016-27 about all outsourcing and limiting it, it is not happening because you don't have the skills in the country.
Thank you. Honorable Mbene.
A starting point would be just to respond to some points made by previous speakers about the shortcomings and deficiencies in some outsourcing situations. And the key point there is that it's not the inherent nature of outsourcing that causes challenges like those mentioned by Honorable Sheikh Imam. It is the misapplication of outsourcing. If you have open, competitive, and unbiased bidding processes, then you will not have that kind of corruption. And Chairperson, in that vein, a major risk that reckless and indiscriminate insourcing of the kind proposed by the EFF poses is that it will be squeezing the opportunity space for small businesses. For better or worse, the state is one of the largest single buyers of goods and services in our economy, and its purchasing power can and should be used to create and expand economic opportunities that promote broad prosperity. There are thousands of small businesses that benefit from government procurements, and in so doing, they provide employment, labor absorption, and skills development opportunities and livelihoods for thousands of households. At a time of high and rising unemployment, the last thing our country needs is further job losses from ill-considered or misapplied insourcing policy. Rather, as the DA has repeatedly stated, the number one item on the agenda must be job-creating economic growth and consequently disregarding anything which undermines that agenda. And that is why part of the DA's policy approach to supporting small businesses is advocating for supply chain inclusion and implementing it as far as practically possible where we govern. We are committed to being an opportunity party leading opportunity governments that build an opportunity society for all. But Chairperson, I would be remiss if I failed to highlight a less obvious but key danger concerning this debate on insourcing. Without wanting to sound McCarthyist, this danger is most aptly labeled as the red menace. When we consider that the EFF wants to nationalize almost anything of economic value that it lays sight upon, this impulse, combined with vacuum cleaner insourcing, of sucking in all contract workers indiscriminately into full-time state employment, would result in little more than a huge labor aristocracy job scheme, ready for manipulation as a patronage system for politically partisan or other narrow ends. That is the cronyist disease we must reveal as lurking within the Trojan horse of the EFF's insourcing rhetoric, when we consider in view of their full and horrifying socialist vision. If anyone thought on-point engineering was bad, wait until the Marcus Leninist nightmare of social engineering comes true.
Tatun Shaisa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Insourcing for players, good as it may be, but you have got to do checks and balances. The complexity of this debate is amplified by the current economic woes that South Africa finds itself in. Any motion that seeks to insource employees working under government entities has a good chance of being affirmed by the proletariat and the working class. The dictatorship of proletariat dictum, ideological, sounds like a noble and a pro-communist slogan. As socialists, there are questions perhaps that we need to interrogate. In economic hardships, should we still pursue measures that will cripple our economy? We should guard against that. Will the insourcing of workers by government entities improve our social and economic capital in areas such as health, education, infrastructure, and development? If public service wage bill is bloated, what end in sight will the insourcing of workers by government entities achieve? Honorable Chair, we are grappling with these questions. Our research data indicates that insourcing workers without tightening the retrenchment requirements will be an exercise in futility. We also gathered that insourcing workers in turbulent economic times will lead to fiscal crisis. Chair, to achieve this motion, we will have to grow our economy by 5% annually. Then we pay our national debt, which currently sits at 3 billion. We also address the policy certainty and the investor confidence and reskill our workers. Of course, Chairperson, must never lose sight of the pressing priorities that confront us. As the Kgang Moseneng puts it, there are times when it is more appropriate to become a pine tree than a willow tree. This is not the time, I believe. We need quality jobs so as to develop the state and grow our economy. We should against the workers becoming victims of the circumstances and the fourth industrial revolution. We should also guard against the increasing number of unemployment in our country. The fact is, the capital state will never create proper and decent jobs. I thank you.
Sithokoza Mhlonishwa Hendricks.
Honorable Chair, let me share with the House that after the ANC dismissed 200 workers in the city of Johannesburg who cleaned the streets of Johannesburg, the DA eventually insourced all of them. Thank you very much, the DA, for setting an example to the country to insource workers. Al-Jamaa played a very important role in that. Our one councillor managed to assist the workers and eventually succeeded. That's why they want to make him the new mayor of the city of Johannesburg. Honorable Chair, Al-Jamaa supports the position of Honorable Julius Malema to build state capacity and the government department to stop supporting labor brokers and be clients that help oppress workers, denying them decent work. South Africa is a signatory to the Convention on Decent Work. Each year an award is made in November, and President Mandela was the first recipient, followed by our darling Winnie Mandela. 5 parliaments have failed the country in not implementing this undertaking. Decent work requires workers to have dignity and enjoy pension funds, medical aid facility benefits, job security, as well as opportunities for promotion and skills development. It is time we examine how many workers working for the state in all 3 tiers of government that do not enjoy decent work and start to give them the dignity our Constitution demands and not the job impoverishment that they have to suffer. Al-Jamaa thanks the EFF for raising this great challenge and for Honourable Pambela for stating the case so strongly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable Matsoni.
House Chairperson, firstly, may I extend my sincerest condolences to the ANC and to the family of Deputy Minister Hlongwa. May she rest in peace. She was a real asset to our country, and her loss is felt by us all. Over 10 million South Africans are unemployed. State-owned entities have been used as an ANC employment agency for years and years. These employment agencies have led to the country's economic quagmire that it finds itself in, and given all that we know about state capture, it has all but destroyed our economy. We simply do not have the luxury to waste time in hoping that state-owned entities will turn around the economy. The harsh truth has been thrust upon us. Even the strongest opponents to privatization, or at least part thereof, have to realize that it is not business as usual. Doing the same thing over and over again, but getting the same result, always hoping for a different outcome, is nothing less than insanity. A free market economy contributes to political and civil freedom. It contributes to economic freedom and transparency, and it ensures competitive markets. Supply and demand create competitions which help ensure that the best goods or services are provided to the customer at the lowest possible price. The country needs to be investment friendly. It must be a safe and easy place to do business. We need to create an environment of competition that allows more investors to come in, open up and create jobs. State-owned entities on their own can lead us only to the direct path of the IMF's door. This is absolute proof, undeniable evidence that state-owned entities pose the biggest risk to our country and that of the economy. There are many problems associated with the use of state-owned entities as employment agencies. When the government forces businesses or state-owned entities to hire union workers, it discriminates against non-union workers, causing them to be at a severe disadvantage or, quite frankly, permanently unemployed. Unions exist primarily to keep out competition. They are state-protected cartels like any other. We cannot risk being held ransom. It is too easy and it happens too often. It is because political ideology is trumping political pragmatism. And I can assure you of this. I today talk on behalf of the pensioners who have had their salaries stolen from the VBS Bank. And I speak on behalf of the security guards and cleaners at VBS that now no longer have their jobs. How much more can we endure? How many more times do we need to catastrophically fail at service delivery until we finally realize that cadre deployment is a disaster and only the best person for the job should be considered? The DA will work to get a job in every home and to ensure that the markets are open, competition is allowed to flourish, and that legislation ensures the growth of the economy.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of State Security, Honourable Doja, to take the debate.
Chairperson and Honourable Members, good afternoon. At the outset, we would like to welcome the debate about some of the proposed approaches and efforts to build the capacity of the state to deliver quality services to our citizens. This debate is very critical because it touches on the strategic challenges that face our country, which is the creation and retention of decent jobs for our people. While it is important to respond directly to the proposed focus on government and state entities with regard to insourcing of workers, it is also critical that to approach the issue of jobs holistically as to involve all critical players in our economy. We must work with our social partners and the private sector in finding solutions that will build the capacity of the state while creating and protecting decent jobs for our people. As government, we have done a great deal of work to bring together the collective energies of these different role players in an effort to find a lasting solution to the strategic challenge of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. The stimulus package that we adopted following our successful job summit requires the efforts of all of us to achieve our social and economic goals, especially on the issue of decent jobs. Regarding the specific issue raised by the Honourable Malema, we have to admit that our experience has confirmed over the years that outsourcing of jobs generally carries with it negative social challenges and far-reaching impact on job security and employee benefits such as pension and medical aid. Social effects of this are experienced in varying degrees by the outsourced workers. It is tried, and research has shown overwhelmingly that in the context of unregulated outsourcing, outsourced and casual workers often end up with lower wages and fewer employee benefits than they actually deserve. This is why, Honourable Chairperson and members of the This is why, Honorable Chairperson and members, the ANC has, in its manifesto, committed to develop a short and medium-term plan to insource support services back into the public service. A cost-benefit analysis will have to be embarked upon, which will determine the pace and scale of the implementation of this program. As this is not a new call or idea, we will continue to build on the work that we already started almost 10 years ago at the eThekwini municipality, where we insourced the security management units under community and emergency services. This program has proven to be successful and will continue to explore other areas of intervention to accelerate the program. A security company will charge a client 14,500 for a grade C level entry guard. And the client company will pay 4,000, and they will pay the guard 4,377 per month as their basic salary. Government employed security guards compare the same as if the product or the employee is procured from the private sector. So it becomes more expensive for government and the client company. In this current financial year, we have also started a pilot project of in-sourced refuse removal at Umlazi, covering all municipal areas. Impela, and a few months of implementation of this project, the Metro is already seeing positive results in terms of the quality of services and feedback from residents. Honorable members will recall that we are seized with the overarching process of the reconfiguration of government as part of the broader exercise of the macro configuration of the state. And part of that work is to explore workable models in employment practice, talent search, performance management and development, which in part will involve options for outsourcing where it makes economic sense to do that. Ultimately, the macro configuration of the state project will inform us of the nature and character of the public service that we all seek to build for the future. It is important that we build a public service that has adequate systems to measure performance and deliver of quality services in particular. Driven by the policy direction and as contained in the National Development Plan, we're also exploring cutting-edge initiatives to make the public service an attractive employer of choice. This includes training and development programs in critically scarce skills in different areas. We cannot achieve this without providing an attractive package to these young people, which will not only guarantee their career growth path and development, but also a sustainable future in the job market. In welcoming the debate on insourcing of government services, the challenge for all of us is to try and use our system to find solutions for the social and economic challenges of our country. It is also our belief that insourcing of non-essential services will result in the following: improved service delivery, decent jobs and job security for all workers, reduced budget expenditure in the public purse. As members of parliament, we must also assist government efforts towards the achievement of decent jobs, increase in real employment, which will also boost our economy. There is no time for grandstanding. Our country needs all the energies we can deploy to end the scourge of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Let us work towards the implementation of the ANC's election manifesto. Comrade Mavelile was writing her own chapter in South African history books. Losing her so young is even more devastating because her story has now been cut short. She had so much to offer, touched so many lives as she journeyed through life. Condolences to her family, colleagues, friends, and her family, the African National Congress. May her soul rest in eternal peace. Hamba kahle Mbokodo.
Ra leboga. Mohlomphegi Malema.
Thank you very much. I think that the notes of the minister were supposed to be given to Honorable Shelley because she didn't necessarily understand the subject matter. And therefore she's extremely challenged. She asked a question that the EFF said in its manifesto 80,000 jobs must be created, and where will the money come from? But the reality is that there are 123,000 jobs, vacancies now, budgeted for. That's where the money is, Ceci. Just check, you can even do the Google, it's simple. So there can be more than 80,000 jobs created now with the budget which exists now. So, you know, that's why we will quickly miss people like Bavelile, because the young, when they stand here, they should, you know, represent ideas and not some backwardness which is unfounded. I think the DA should have asked our mayor of Johannesburg to come and engage in this debate, because our mayor of Johannesburg, the EFF mayor, Mashaba, understands the insourcing much better. Because during outsourcing, we were spending 571 million. During insourcing, we're spending 466 million, meaning there is a save of 100 million from insourcing. Motion tabled by the EFF, and it's successful. There is no way that insourcing can create jobs, because we all know that the private sector is driven by profit. They always inflate prices. If a can of Coke is 20 rand, once you outsource it and say a company must go and buy it, they will sell it to the state at 80 rand. We all know that. They've never sold it at 19 rand or 21 rand. It's a simple logic. So it is the insourcing which is going to save us jobs. The Freedom Front person here says the affirmative action is the one that made the state capacity to be bad because we prioritized affirmative action. So he's simply saying that it is white people who are excelling with doing good things. Blacks are not good. Racists will never hide their racism. At every given opportunity, they will always show who they are. There is no such a thing as affirmative action creating lack of state capacity. If we insource, we save money, we create more jobs, and our economy will grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. We now go to motions without notice. Thank you. Order. Thank you. Does any member of the ANC wish to give a motion without notice?
Westla.
Siyathokoza, ungaqhubeka.
Enkosi. The ANC moves without notice that the House welcomes the appointment of Judge Zugisalora Lumkachikwi and Judge Stefan Arnold Majid as judges of the Constitutional Court with effect from 1st October 2019. Notes that the President made the appointments after consulting the Chief Justice of the Republic and the leaders of the parties represented in the National Assembly. Recognizes that Judge Chikwi holds a BProc degree and a postgraduate diploma in labor law, and Judge Majid holds a BA Law and LLB degrees from University of the Western Cape. Believes that the combined experience of both justices will further enrich jurisprudence and play pivotal roles at the Constitutional Court, and wishes Judge Zugisalora Lumkachikwi and Judge Stefan Arnold Majid much success in their new positions. I so move.
Thank you. Are there no objections to the motion? Did I hear a yes? No, no objections. Agreed to. DA?
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that the Republic is experiencing critical problems with the training of nurses and stands to face a looming training crisis by the end of this year if delays at key regulatory authorities are not finalized. Further notes that
Voorsitter, hiermee stel ek namens die Demokratiese Alliansie voor dat hierdie huis kennis neem dat die digter, skrywer, kunstenaar en aktivis meneer Breitenbach op 16 September sy 80ste verjaarsdag gevier het. Verder kennis neem dat Breitenbach sedert sy eerste gepubliseerde werk, Die Uisterkoei moet sweet in 1964, 'n onskatbare bydrae gelewer het tot die Afrikaanse letterkunde en die Afrikaanse leefwêreld en dat hy vandag tereg beskryf kan word as een van die grootste lewende Afrikaanse digters. Erken dat Breitenbach meermale bekroon en op verskeie maniere vereer is, onder meer deur eredoktorsgrade van die Universiteite van Wes-Kaapland en KwaZulu-Natal, sowel as 'n aantal internasionale toekennings. Verder erken dat hy 'n aktiewe anti-apartheidsaktivis was.
In 1983. Further acknowledges that he was honored at the Hollywood and African Prestigious Awards in Los Angeles in November 2017 and appreciates the recognition of her outstanding professional accomplishments. I so move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any objection to the motion? None agreed to. AIC? COPE? ANC?
Thank you, House Chair. The African National Congress moves without notice that the House commends the law enforcement agencies for arresting a most wanted housebreaking suspect in Durban Central. Knows that the suspect has allegedly been breaking into people's homes for a number of years. Further knows that the 36-year-old was arrested at the hideout in Kwamashu, north of Durban. Recalls that the suspect was wanted for housebreaking cases that were reported as far back as 2002 from eThekwini to Mandeni and Scottsboro in the South Coast. Understands that he faced at least 15 cases of housebreaking in various courts in KwaZulu-Natal and congratulates the Durban Central Police officers for the work well done, especially the intelligence whose information led to the arrest of most wanted housebreaker in Durban. I thank you.
Move. Is there any objection to the motion? No objection. Agreed to. GA?
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that Ms. Luzanne Coetzee, a profoundly blind South African Paralympic athlete, broke yet another national record on 30 August 2019 at the World Para-Athletics Grand Prix 2019 held in Paris, France. Further notes that Ms. Coetzee clocked a personal best time of 4 hours, 51 minutes and 65 seconds, improving on the record she set for the South African 1,500 meter T11 classification for totally blind. Acknowledges that Ms. Coetzee is also the world record holder for the 5,000 meter event and the African record holder for the 800 meter event. Recognizes that Ms. Coetzee's time clocked in Paris has qualified her to participate in the 1,500 meter event at the second Paralympic Games in Tokyo, Japan next year, where she has already qualified to participate in a marathon. Further acknowledges that Ms. Coetzee, who was born with undeveloped retinas in Bloemfontein, has not only overcome adversity to become an inspiring and successful athlete, but is also currently busy completing her master's degree in social cohesion and reconciliation studies at the University of the Free State. Congratulates Ms. Coetzee on all her achievements and wishes her well in all her endeavors.
Thank you. Are there any objections? None. Agreed to. PS. Al-Jama.
Thank you, House Chair. Al-Jama moves that the House congratulate Dr. Van Alwe and Geshi Ajagi a senior lecturer in physical chemistry at the University of the Western Cape, which was also my alma mater, acknowledges the prestigious National Research Foundation Research Excellence Award granted to her for emerging researchers. Notes that she received the award for groundbreaking work at UWC's Sensor Lab in the field of TB, HIV, drug metabolism, enzyme, electroactive sensor development. I'm very proud of the University of Western Cape. Further notes also her work on green nanotechnology, recalls that she was identified as one of South Africa's top 50 women in technology in 2018. I so move.
Thank you. Any objections to the motion? None. Thank you. The motion is therefore agreed to. ANC. ANC. There is a lady behind you, Honorable Dex. Allow her. Or is it Dex? Okay.
Thanks, Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debate the review.
Okay, Honorable Member, you will come when we do notices of motion.
Yes.
Thank you. Dex, continue.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes that South Africa's Dr. Jackie King has been named the 2019 Stockholm Water Prize laureate for her game-changing contribution to global river management. 2, further notes that the prize is the world's most prestigious water award and that honors women, men, and organizations that have made extraordinary water-related achievements. 3, also notes that King transformed the way people think, talk, and work with water as a flow of life. 4, also understands that through her work she has advanced a scientific understanding of water flows, giving decision makers tools to assess the real costs and benefits of river system development. 5, believes that her work will assist decision makers understand that a healthy river ecosystem are not a luxury but the basis for sustainable development. 6, thank her for raising the South African flag high in the international arena and wishing her much more success in her future endeavors. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you. Any objection to the motion? None agreed to. Thank you. The next item on the order paper is member statements. They are here. I have counted more than 6. Honorable members from the ANC, anyone who wishes to make a statement?
Honorable Chair, the ANC reiterates its commitment to putting in place a quality national health care plan where all South Africans are able to access quality health care based on need. We therefore welcome the official opening of the 2 state-of-the-art clinics, one at Mthatha by the Minister Mkhize on Saturday, and another one at Lusikisiki by the President Ramaphosa today, which therefore is a huge achievement and contribution towards the realization of the health plan. These 2 clinics represent the first of the 8 ideal national health insurance clinics built by the National Health Department in the OR Tambo district, which has been chosen as part of the 10 pilot sites for the rollout of the NHI. The ANC believes that the NHI clinics will ensure that the problems of long queues for patient treatment, especially for the elderly, the shortage of medicines in clinics, as well as the poor infrastructure and health facilities in the province, will be addressed and improved. We are fully aware that the journey towards universal health coverage will not have its challenges, but we remain committed and resolute in our promise to our people that the ANC cares, the ANC lives, and the ANC leads. I thank you.
Thank you. The GA.
Voorzitter, met die totstandkoming van 'n nuwe Afrikaanse opleidingskollege doen meneer Lesofie dit weer.
Elke keer wanneer Afrikaners hul grondwetlike reg, hul taal, opeis, wys hy duidelik dat hy Afrikaans haat en so die noodsaaklike versoeningsprojek in ons land teenstaan. Die publiek is keelvol vir sy rasagenda. Moedertaalonderrig het niks met ras te doen nie, wel met gehalte onderwys. Tydens 'n onderhoud met Radio 702 in Augustus gaan hy teen die skolewet en sy magte as LER deur aan te kondig dat geen skool tans 'n taalbeleid het nie, want hy het dit geskraap. Hy sê, all language policies at schools are declared null and void. Regtig. Hy vergeet gerieflikheidsonthaalwe van sy nederlaag in die konstitusionele hof in 2018, toe hy probeer het om 'n Afrikaans medium skool te dwing om Engelse leerders in te neem. Lesofie moet eerder daarop fokus om moedertaalonderrig in al ons amptelike tale te ontwikkel en te bevorder, sodat leerders deur hul volle potensiaal kan bereik. Daar kan geen plek vir rassetwis of verdeling in ons land se onderwysstelsel wees nie.
Thank you. ANC. Sorry, EFF. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Thank you very much, House Chair. On Friday, the 15th September 2019, I went to Mahatma Gandhi Hospital in Phoenix in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal province as a member of parliament to do my work as per the Constitution of South Africa. I was then informed by the hospital chief executive officer that there is a policy that I need to follow. I must apply to the MEC of Health in KZN, and I will be allowed to carry on my oversight only she approves. I then called the Minister of Health, and as expected, he never answered the call. I then called the Deputy Minister of Health, Joe Pahla, who proudly said, indeed, members of parliament must not be allowed to do their oversight. They can only do so if permitted by the MECs. Later on the day, I was called by the two members of public who had arrived in the hospital early in the morning and had received no assistance. They were in hospital until early hours of the next morning. On the very same day, two patients died on the benches where there was no assistance from the hospital. We cannot allow the illegal denial of members of parliament to his deputy minister as a member of parliament. We further call on the Minister of Health to stop his colleagues in KZN and all other provinces to stop the methods of thinking that we are employed by the Ministry in the Provincial Department of Health.
ANC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ANC welcomes the move to
And issuing of certificates has far-reaching negative implications to the candidates as they find themselves struggling to find employment because they have no way to prove their qualifications. These colleges are aimed at producing employable young people with occupational and vocational skills to qualify as engineers, electricians, plumbers, and boil makers, skills that are very much in demand in this country. It would be impossible to meet the targets that are in the NDP for 2030 on the production of better skills profile South Africa if we are failing to issue successful students with their certificates. Students graduating from TVET colleges may also qualify for admission to the country's 26 universities of technology, however, cannot enroll at these universities due to the delay in them receiving their certification. The frustrations and anger conveyed by these individuals and their families need to be heeded. As IFP, we implore the Department of Higher Education, Science and Technology to investigate the backlog and take decisive action and to provide the public with a time frame by which the release of certificates for TVET students will be completed. Thank you.
Thank you. FF Plus.
Geachte voorzitter, dit het onder die VF Plus se aandag gekom dat die afgelope Vrydag, 13 September 2019, daar nie minder nie as 3 brande by 3 verskillende hospitale reg oor Suid-Afrika uitgebreek het en enorme skade aan hierdie hospitale aangerig het. Die eerste brand het plaasgevind by die Mitchellsplein Daghospitaal, die tweede by die Braamvieser Internasionale Lughospitaal in Bloemfontein en die derde hier by die Tygerberg Hospitaal hier in Kaapland. En net verlede Woensdag het ek hier in hierdie Einstehuis die minister van Gesondheid gevra waarom 11 hospitale en klinieke in Gauteng nie hulle veiligheidsaudits kon slaag nie. En die agbare minister kon nie antwoord op die vraag wat ek aan hom gerig het nie. Nou ons herhaal as Vryheidsfront Plus weer ons standpunt dat infrastrukture van staatshospitale en klinieke dringend herstel moet word alvorens die regering daaraan kan dink om die nasionale gesondheidsversekering op Suid-Afrikaners af te dwing. En die Vryheidsfront Plus spreek ook weer hoop uit dat daar dringend aandag gegee sal word in die infrastrukture van hospitale en klinieke in hierdie land. Dankie voorsitter.
Dankie. ANC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The official opening of a sexual offences court in Sibasa outside Tuyando on Friday the 13th of September 2019 is an indication of the ANC government's serious commitment to address the scourge of gender-based violence in our country. The court will accelerate prosecution rates in this region. In addition, it will assist in alleviating caseloads in magistrate courts in the Vembe region, which is grappling with alarming rates of gender-based violence, with more than 13,000 open cases in that region, which includes rape, domestic violence, and deaths. The ANC commends its government for prioritizing gender-based violence as well as for availing resources to this effect. The opening of this court brings to 94 the number of sexual offences courts across the country. We also await another 10 sexual offences courts, which are expected to be opened across the country before the end of 2019. I thank you.
Thank you. The GA.
Honourable Chairperson, billions of rands in the compensation fund cannot be traced. That has been revealed by the Compensation Fund 2018-19 annual report, which was issued today. The Auditor General has once again issued a disclaimer on the fund's financial statements. That is because of a lack of sufficient evidence to provide a basis for the audit opinion. The Compensation Fund has become a veritable basket case. The situation is so bad that the Auditor General has stated that were it not for his obligation to audit public entities, he would have withdrawn from looking at the fund altogether. The AG was unable to determine whether any adjustments were necessary for revenue of 9.3 billion rand and receivables of 2.3 billion rand for non-exchangeable transactions, or debt impairment of 14.5 billion rand. The AG further found that management did not implement adequate internal controls to maintain records of benefits claimed. As such, he was unable to determine the accuracy of benefits paid to the tune of 5.4 billion rand. The AG's report is an utter indictment of the Compensation Fund. It makes a mockery of the Minister of Employment and Labour's desire to use the resources of the fund for the purposes of job creation. The DA will hold the Compensation Fund to account on Friday when it appears before our committee. I thank you.
ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. The ACDP notes yesterday's South Gauteng High Court judgment by Judge Sutherland, wherein certain sections of the Regulation of Communications and provisions of communication-related information RECA Act were found to be unconstitutional. Now, while any parliamentarian should be concerned when a piece of legislation which is duly passed by Parliament is found to be unconstitutional, in this case the finding is intended to prevent abuses by law enforcement and intelligence agencies. And the judgment follows media group Ama Bungani challenging the constitutionality of certain sections of the Act after it emerged that a journalist, Sam Soul's communications were intercepted while he was reporting on the corruption investigation against former President Zuma. The direct implication of this judgment is that bulk surveillance activities which can be abused are now unlawful, and this is to be welcomed. The ACDP looks forward to the Justice Portfolio Committee considering and passing amendments to rectify the defects as well as preventing abuses of this important law. I thank you.
Thank you.
ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC fully supports the call for harsher sentences for perpetrators of gender-based violence. We therefore welcome the sentencing of the KwaZulu-Natal serial rapist, 32-year-old Mlungisi Mjoli, to 7 life terms of imprisonment in the Durban High Court on Friday, the 13th of September 2019, for rapes committed between 2014 and 2016 in the areas of Insikeni, Chetworth, Inanda and Kwadakusa. Mlungisi Mjoli is a repeat offender who was sentenced to 9 years in prison for rape in 2010 and was later released on parole in 2014. After his release, he continued with his evil deeds for terrorizing of women. He also currently in court for dealing in and on possession of drugs. We hope that this harsh sentence will serve as a deterrent to those who perpetrate gender-based violence and sexual assault. Law-abiding citizens, the government and social partners all stand united in our efforts to end violence against women and children. I so move.
Thank you. NFP.
Thank you, House Chair. There we are. Yeah. The National Freedom Party notes with concern the eviction of 80-year-old Kenneth Blaine and his family on Monday morning in Woodstock, Cape Town. After the CPF chairperson called in and an investigation was done, it was established that Mr. Blaine has been occupying the said premises at 19 Plain Street for 43 years. Mr. Blaine has been attempting to take ownership of the property for decades, but to no avail. Mr. Blaine and his goods and his family had to sleep on the street. All attempts to find shelters failed. All rent payments were up to date. The National Freedom Party has repeatedly called on government to place a moratorium on all evictions nationally, but to no avail. The said property in 29 Plain Street, Woodstock in Cape Town is due to be auctioned today. Mr. Blaine is still recovering from foot surgery and presently living on the street.
Thank you. ANC.
The ANC welcomes the new trade deal with 5 other countries in the region that has been concluded with the UK recently. This new agreement means sanctity and a legal framework for trade with UK in the event that the UK leaves the European Union without an agreement between them. This has been currently scheduled for October 31st, 2019. The agreement would govern the trade relationship and tariffs between South Africa, Lesotho, Eswatini, Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique, and the UK. A no-deal Brexit would have added additional cost to exporting and importing goods for both South Africa and the United Kingdom, as higher tariffs would have needed to be added to the cost of trading between the UK and South Africa. In 2018, the UK was the 4th largest destination for South African exports, with bilateral trade of more than 140 billion rands a year. The ANC believes that the new agreement, known as the SACUM UK Economic Partnership Agreement, replicates the terms of the agreement in the existing Economic Partnership Agreement with the AU, including relating to tariffs, quotas, rules, origin, health and safety regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. GA?
The ANC-led city of Ekurhuleni has failed to provide the residents of Lindelani informal settlement with electricity. This brings into question the pro-perk policy credentials that they purport to possess. Rather, they seem to be comfortable maintaining the status quo, which dictates that those who live on the margins of society shall remain there. Therefore, I ask the House to take note of the following. There have been few to no basic services in Lindelani informal settlement since the residents of Apex were moved there in 1999, 20 years ago. Despite ANC promising electrification last year, this has not materialized. This has several implications for people's health
their finances and their safety. Most concerning is the safety of women. No electricity means no streetlights, and women in the community are being attacked in the dark. Considering the recent spate of gender-based violence and femicide, it is imperative that the security-related challenge to a lack of electrification is addressed immediately. The residents of Lindolani cannot be subjected to this undignified means of living anymore. The city of Ekurhuleni needs to act now. The Democratic Alliance will not rest until our communities receive the services they deserve.
Thank you. EFF.
Thank you. We are disgusted to learn that Sikoli Sile Mehlomakulu, the Alfred Nzo ANC regional chairperson and district mayor, has been physically abusing his mother to such an extent that she had to get a protection order against the mayor following repeated cases of domestic abuse. What pains us even more is that the elderly woman is almost 90 years old. She should be enjoying these days with her grandchildren, but instead she lives in fear of his son. The country is bleeding from gruesome cases of gender-based violence and criminality which have claimed many lives of innocent women and children. And as leaders, we are expected to be actively against the spread of violence and lawlessness. The mayor is a leader of society and should lead by example, and should be a personification of moral and ethical behavior. By keeping such a person in a position of authority, the ANC is condoning that kind of behavior. We call on the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs to intervene in that municipality, to ensure that the mayor is a fit and proper person to hold that job. We further call on the Minister of Police to ensure that Sikolile is arrested for abusing his mother. I thank you.
Thank you. ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. Even though apartheid might have ended some decades ago, racism still continues to rear its ugly head in our country. The case in point is that of a ShopRite regional manager in Johannesburg Southgate Mall who used the K word as he was speaking to her subordinate, which shows that we have a long way to go in terms of nation building and social cohesion. The affected employees later opened a criminal injury case on the Mondio police station, and 2 neighboring branches were closed earlier last week because of this incident. Even though the ShopRite group appeared to strongly condemn racism in the workplace, as the African National Congress will continue to await the outcome of the disciplinary process, which is currently underway. Derogatory comments intended to denigrate the intelligence, humanity, and beliefs of black people continues to be rife. The use of the K word is endemic. For many poor black people, this is part of the daily fabric of their lives, and they remain vulnerable to racist treatment. As the African National Congress, we will not tolerate this kind of racial discrimination, be it at schools or at the workplace level. As the ANC, we believe that concerted intervention should be done in all sectors of our society to eradicate racism.
Thank you. Thank you. PAC, not here. ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. Family finally buried fallen MK operatives 41 years after his death. The ANC-led government, together with the Missing Persons Task Team, continues to exhume, hand over to families and facilitate burials of the remains of the freedom fighters who died either inside or outside the borders of South Africa. There are still remains of our struggle heroes and heroines whose graves are yet to be relocated, exhumed, and given a decent burial. A former Umkhonto Wesizwe operative, Becky Cyprian Hlatswayo, was finally buried on Saturday, the 14th September 2019 at the Thomas Nkobi Memorial Park in Boksburg. His remains were discovered by the NPA's Missing Persons Task Team, conducted extensive excavation at Mabatu Cemetery, and located a grave with the remains of 2 men in a single coffin. Their remains were identified as Comrade Hlatswayo
and Goniwe. His remains were their remains were handed over to their families by the Ministry of Justice in July 2015. The freedom fighter, Goniwe, was reburied at his home in Eastern Cape. Kometlatswayo remains were kept at the mortuary in Soweto, whilst families were still deciding on his final resting place. May their souls rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you. That concludes member statements, ministerial responses. Honorable Patel, you start, and then, yes.
Thank you, House Chair. I want to welcome in particular the statements by Honorable Mpanza, Tswete and Lomo. Honorable Mpanza pointed to the agreement that was the subject of a discussion under the ministerial statement earlier on the UK-South Africa agreement to deal with the consequences of a no-deal Brexit. And as we indicated earlier, it provides certainty for investors and it will keep our export pipelines open. Honorable Swete drew attention to an application to expand the special economic zone in East London, where additional investors have expressed an interest. And that application is now under consideration, and the SEZ is one of two in the Eastern Cape, Kucha and the East London one. Honorable Dlomo welcomed the opening of two state-of-the-art clinics in Mthatha and Kumbu as part of the Ideal Health Clinic. And I draw attention to these three because they show the connection in government policy. On the one hand, with the agreement with the UK, we're opening up demand for South African goods. So we're dealing with the demand side of it. Through the Special Economic Zone program, we're creating opportunities for investors to place their money in bricks and mortar and production processes. So we're dealing with the supply side so that we have the industrial capability to use the demand that there is. And through the Ideal Clinic program and some of the other programs of government, we're dealing with a social dimension because ultimately this is about human beings, about a healthy population, a healthy workforce, and improving productivity by ensuring that we have these policies in place. So these three statements, even though they're not connected in themselves, show the beginning of a coordinated program to deal with the challenges that we face as a society and as an economy, and to unlock that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mutwaledi.
Thank you. Chairperson, I wish to respond to two questions or statements, one from the DA, one from Freedom Front Plus. The Freedom Front Plus is arguing about something that we've been discouraging, that every problem that is experienced in health is a good indication why there can't be NHI. It's talking about infrastructure. The program on infrastructure to support NHI has already been there, it's already been implemented. And today is a good example. The president is opening a state-of-the-art clinic in Lisikisiki. One was opened on Saturday. There were 8 of them which were completed in OR Tambo district. 5 are being built in Limpopo, they are about to be completed. The other 5 are being built in Mpumalanga. And lastly, on this issue, people in this profession understand better, you need to go and ask them. When they signed the compact with the president, the compact on NHI, infrastructure was part of that. And they have signed that compact with the understanding that infrastructure improvement will happen. In fact, over the past 5 years, the Department of Health spent 1.9 billion rand in improving infrastructure in the pilot district. The question about language, Honorable Chair, the use of language as a barrier from entering certain schools in this country must come to an end. There is nothing Honorable Lusufi is doing. This thing has been happening over a long period of time. Some of us were MECs for education. I remember when I was in Limpopo, when I asked that in the former Model C schools, they must introduce African languages, just as a language, Sivenda, Sitonga, and Sepedi. There was an uprising, I had to fire
Thank
a
you.
principal. I had to fire a principal for that.
Thank you. Mepando?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, indeed it is true that there's been a backlog of certificates, as the Honourable Member of the IFP has indicated. This matter is being addressed along with CETA by the Department of Higher Education and Science and Technology. There has been progress, and I think there'll be faster progress as an improved system of recording subjects comes into play. It is the manner in which one completes modules within the TVET system that tends to cause a system breakdown in compiling the totality of what would be an outcome certificate. But the Minister is fully alert to the problem and is addressing it. I wish to assure the Honourable Member of that. I certainly would agree, Chairperson, with the Honourable Member of the DA that all municipalities should do much more to ensure that there is electricity, there are lights, and there's increased safety, particularly for women, but I think for all community members. This is an area that must be addressed, and we should ensure that wherever it is possible, we provide all services that the people need. I am aware that Ekurhuleni is intensifying efforts to provide greater basic services. I would accept that there is a failure in the area of Lindelani and the matter mentioned, but there are many areas in which much progress has been recorded in the Ekurhuleni municipality, and we hope that they will do more, as the Honourable Member has indicated, to address the particular problems in Lindelani. Finally, I think certainly our Chief Whip will look into this matter that's been raised about an ANC member, and we hope, should it be proven that it is untrue, that a due statement clarifying that untruth will be made. Should it prove to be true, I'm sure the ANC will take action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable Jeffrey?
Thanks. I wanted to respond, I think it's to about 5 questions or 5 statements. The first, just from the Honourable Swart on the yesterday's judgment on the Interception of Communications Bill, which Honourable Swart is well aware of, as you were involved in working on the bill, and I think it was passed unanimously by this House. But the bill, we have been in a process of revising the bill. Obviously, the judgment gives greater impetus, but obviously it also will have to be confirmed by the Constitutional Court. So that is very much work in progress. It's a moving target as technology develops, and so what we may have been happy with in 2002 when the bill was passed, things may be different now. Then just on the issue from Honourable Nivot Rushan on the sexual offences courts, yes, indeed, there's been a steady rollout of sexual offences courts since the 2013-14 financial year, with between 19 and 10 new courts being established each year, 15 in the last financial year, 17 the one before then. So there's a continuous rollout. We're now at 94. And also sentences for sexual offences are high. Most of them are subject to the minimum sentences regime. The conviction rate has also been steadily increasing from 48% in 2000 to over 70% for the last 4 years. Then just on the issue of racism, we hope that, well, there is a hate crimes, or there was a hate crimes and hate speech bill in the last Parliament, which we hope will be revived. Obviously, the Constitutional Court judgment in the Masuku matter will also give clarity as to what can be restricted and what can't be. And then the last point on missing persons, I think it is important to highlight the work done by the NPA's Missing Persons Task Team, and to be aware of the fact that there are still a large number of people who have disappeared, who are unaccounted for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Minister Mkhize?
Chairperson, thank you very much. I'm going to respond to a question by the Honorable Member of the ANC on sexual offences courts. I really want to assure the House that the government has taken time to listen very carefully to survivors of gender-based violence and femicide as to what will make a difference. And since the summit that was held by the President, there's been a decisive response in terms of expanding the sexual offences courts, which are seen by survivors as critical in ensuring that the justice is not delayed and the courts are more efficient in understanding this issue of gender-based violence and femicide. Also related to that, the women have been very clear and vocal in terms of saying that in this country, this crime of GBV and femicide should be reclassified in such a way that it's under the schedule of serious crimes, so that they don't see people getting bail easily, walking out, going back to communities to re-traumatize them, but also the question of applying for paroles. All those things have been really causing more harm to survivors. And so it's one area also which I think, honorable members, the government has been decisive and responsive to. And of course, harsher sentences. We're seeing more and more a response whereby in our courts, people are not getting the usual few years and then they are out again. But we're seeing, as honorable member was saying in the case of Mlungi Simjoli, harsher sentences whereby the message is sent clearly across the country that these are not ordinary crimes.
Thank you. Honorable Deputy Minister Kiewit.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, let me start with the member's statement on Mehlomakulu and indicate that we should be proud of the kind of laws and regulations we have, especially in light of the fact that as we read what has been referred to, it is clear that the law has been followed. And taking further that the point that the office of the ANC in the province was clear. It was clear in the report that it did call on Mr. Mehlomakulu, but we also need to understand that all of us have got rights. And when a matter is before the courts, we need to allow them to make the judgments. But we cannot upfront make a judgment. At least it is suffice to show that the ANC in the province did care in that it did call on Mr. Mehlomakulu to take it into confidence. The second point, Honorable Chairperson, is the duty of the members of this House to conduct oversight, especially in public institutions such as the hospital. But we also need to be mindful of the fact that a hospital is a sensitive place because there are patient, doctor, confidentiality materials that if we just go into a hospital, anybody being allowed, it can create problems. And therefore,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. That concludes ministerial responses. The last item on the order paper is a notice of a motion. The ANC.
Thanks, Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in the next sitting of the House debate, review competition legislation that enriches the powers of the economic regulators to promote competition based on the fact-based inquiries and investigations, and also to discourage government policy and action that stifles competition. Thank you.
Thank you. DA?
Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, the House debates the ongoing water crisis in Makanda in the Makana local municipality, the steps being taken to address this, and contingency plans to ensure continued availability of supply to residents of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. EFF?
Chair, I rise on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters for the House to debate in its next sitting a need to fulfill the wish of Peter Tosh and one of our own Honorable Mario Ambrosini, that this House must discuss the legalization of marijuana for a variety of purposes such as medical, industrial, and commercial purposes. Let's legalize marijuana, because not only judges smoke marijuana, even members of parliament do smoke marijuana. So,
Thank you. ANC?
Madam Chairperson, thank you. In view of the current and escalating state of unemployment, I rise on behalf of the African National Congress to move that in its next sitting, this House debates the motion, open quote, developing vocational skills, which has got the greatest potentiality for promoting employability. I close the quote. Thank you.
Thank you. IFP?
Honorable Chair, on behalf of Inkatha Freedom Party, I move that the next sitting of the House debates the issue of the backlog with regards to the issuing of certificates by the Department of Higher Education, Science and Technology to successful TVET college students. Thank you.
Thank you. IFF Plus?
Honorable Chair, I hereby give notice that on the next sitting day of the House, I shall move in behalf of the Freedom Front Plus that the House debates the possible interventions by the relevant local authorities and the Department of Water and Sanitation to alleviate the impacts of the drought conditions currently being experienced in the Eastern Cape and the Nelson Mandela area, and the resultant extremely low levels of the main dams supplying water to Port Elizabeth and surrounds, as well as the agricultural sector. Thank you.
Thank you. ANC?
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the crucial role of the informal sector in poverty alleviation. I thank you.
Thank you. ACGP?
Thank you, House Chair. I will move at the next sitting of the House on behalf of the ACDP that the House debates the implications of a possible sovereign ratings downgrade by ratings agency Moody's and the steps required to avoid such a downgrade.
Thank you. UGM? Not here. AGM?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm very glad the House is quiet because this is the most important motion this year. I move on behalf of the ATM that in the next sitting, the House debates on the ring fencing of the microeconomy for the exclusive use of South Africans. I so move.
Thank you. ATM? ADA?
Chairperson, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, in the interest of national safety, this House debates the type, size, capacity and capabilities required of the South African National Defence Force in order to give fruition to Section 202 of the Constitution and to come up with sustainable alternative in compliance with Section 202. I so move.
Thank you. EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters that the House in its next sitting debate the Guyana water crisis, which continues without any solution from the government. The water project in Guyana has become a cesspool of corruption due to the total disregard of the needs of the residents. I so move.
Thank you. ANC. ANC. Oh. Your mic is not on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates transforming and diversifying of the financial sector to ensure that it serves the economy and the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. NFP.
Thank you, House Chair. The National Freedom Party moves that at its next sitting, this House deliberates and resolves to place a moratorium on all state-occupied rental homes unless alternative occupation is provided. I so move.
Thank you. ANC.
Thank you, Chair. I move on behalf of the mighty African National Congress that in the next sitting, the House debates infrastructure investment as a key instrument for development and growth. I thank you.
Thank you. AIC not here. Code not here. ANC. ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates building a culture that protects and promotes human rights, respect and dignity of all citizens. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. DA.
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting this House debates the apparent collapse of the crime intelligence mechanism within the South African Police Service and the negative impact this has on the SAPS's ability to gather relevant information in order to respond timeously to combat crime. Thank you.
Thank you. PhD not here. Al-Jama. Thank you. ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that the next sitting must discuss our education system must be a platform to nurture the future generation of the country patriotic and have more good social moral activities towards building the national democratic revolution, towards the national democratic society. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So, ke bofelo ba di motion tsa rena. Re fitlhile mafelelong ntlo e ka emella. Thank you.